recording.
Okay.
I don't know why that little voice. I don't know.
It's hilarious.
Because we didn't used to have it.
Mm-mm.
It's okay.
All right.
All right.
So we're working off of.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Are we working on that off the document, that 1124 document? Is that where we're following?
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess we're starting with gender inclusion, right?
Yeah, that's what I have up.
Yeah, but we had already gone through that and we had just left it off the meeting. So I'm not sure if we need to, if there's more adjustments that need to be made other than what we took notes on last time. The same with equity as well.
Yep, and that's what I'm tracking too. Is that the changes, we identified the changes that were needed. Did those, and I think they're ready then for the second reading, right?
Well, equity isn't, but the gender inclusion one should be ready for the second reading, and then equity we're waiting for
The feedback.
Jen, the feedback. Yep.
Okay. Great.
So then, what do you want to cover?
What did we have in?
Yeah, we were going to go for what we start to review.
So the
Right.
400 series then?
Yeah.
Yep, and then we were going to organize them by oldest or furthest behind in reviewing.
Right.
I don't know how to
So I
phrase
think
that.
so the 410 policy then, family medical. I know we kind of gave that to Jenny. She doesn't normally look at that. I'm going to probably forward that one on to Kathy Mullen and
Okay.
have that be one of the first policies she looks at for us.
410.
Yeah, 410.
Bob, does she have her Hastings app account created yet?
Yes, she does. She's got email and she's got Hastings app set up. And we're doing our first Zoom walkthrough with a couple things tomorrow.
Perfect. So then I'll just add her to that policy then and send her an email letting her know.
Perfect. All right, so then we can look at, do we want to look at 421 and 430 tonight, or are we just making a list now of what we want to review?
Yeah, I'm good with looking at them tonight.
Sure. Let's start with 421.
I'm looking at the notes. 421 and 430 seem to be the same.
They look, well, they same title.
Oh, I see. So we currently have 430 as our old policy. And 421 is MSBA's updated version.
Oh, okay.
Actually, so let me clarify. I apologize. So we have two policies currently that are staff recognition. We have 421 and 430. And to the best of my knowledge, they're the exact same policy currently, but MSBA has a policy 421 that's gifts to employees and school board members that I don't know is the same thing or not. We have like a duplicate policy with two different numbers.
Let me take a look here once. 421. My guess is 421 addresses gift law. Yep. So 421 addresses gift law in general. My guess is 430 is the policy, where is it? Internally that's been specific to statute gift law, which is what defines what a public institution can and cannot gift to someone in terms of dollars. Yep. So the way that it works, so 421 is the policy that is in place just to remind folks that you can't do things more than nominal value, yada, 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 all the stuff that came out probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. 430, in order to do staff recognition under statute, you have to have a policy that outlines what it is you're doing and how much stuff is going to be given and what it's worth. And so if you look at 430, that's what 430 actually is. It's specific to Hastings. So it's in order for us to do types of staff recognition for years of service, we have to have these things in policy or we can't do them. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm looking at them side by side. They are the exact same thing, like verbatim.
The original 430 staff recognition?
Yeah, and 421. I just pulled them from the website.
430 should be really, it's the one I'm looking at, like really short. It basically just says, here's the gifts and when we give them.
Yeah, and 430, the one I'm seeing is like the old template for our policies, correct? Or is my link not working appropriately?
Yeah, I wasn't able to get to this from the agenda. So I just went out to our website and pulled the policies. I don't know what's going on with my computer here.
Well,
no, my link from the agenda isn't working for 430, sort of. It's weird. It like exists, but isn't taking me to it. Anyway, I don't know. But 421 popped up for me.
All right,
but you know what? I'm looking at MSBA's model policy.
421 is right. Okay, so on our website, so 421 is one of those policies is not correct on our website is what the problem is.
Okay.
But they're numbered as 421 and 430 on the top of each page. So it does look like we have something duplicated.
Yep.
So my guess is 430, if I'm looking at MSBA's model 421, and then our 430, those two would tie together. So what we have on the website for 421 looks like maybe it's the incorrect one. Is that what you guys are seeing too?
Yeah, essentially I would think 430 needs to be the one that just outlines which gifts are given, and 421 needs to be adopted as the from the MSBA model.
Okay.
Yeah, this 421, man, if we haven't had it in Hastings, teachers read this, especially when they read 2B, flip out, right? Because historically, you got families that give teachers gifts. You got kids that give. So who wants to be the volunteer to receive all the phone calls on that one?
It'll inevitably be me.
I've been this. I remember when this policy hit when I was in White Bear Lake, and it was ugh.
Have you been getting a lot of phone calls about policies, Becky? Do you field a lot?
We don't really, Nobody's
Oh.
really called about anything controversial, but anybody who's looking for the superintendent
Oh.
because they're upset, it's
Right.
gonna go through me.
Yeah. Otherwise, Stephanie is the head of this committee, or I'm the chair.
Perfect.
So I think between the four of us, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But
It'll
no,
be
this,
fine.
no, we did this. So I was on policy committee last year, and I think there's a mistake on the website because we've definitely gone through this as a
You think
policy
you've gone
committee
through
before.
421? All right. Well, maybe it just got posted wrong.
Yeah. I mean, even the top of it says revised 2019.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, I don't see any issues with the. Okay.
I don't have any concerns with this, with either of them.
no, they seem good to me. Yeah, I wish we had a board book from like a year ago so we could go back in easily and pull this up to confirm that
Right.
this is the version that was up there.
Let me see if I can jump into Dropbox and see if it's in there. But it'll take me a little bit.
Thanks, Becky. The conversation about teachers being upset is deja vu. So
All right.
Okay, so I went through Dropbox really quick for looking for policy 421. And I see for policy 421, all I see is the same thing that policy 430 is, which is outlining the years of service and everything. I don't see anything different.
All right. Well, we'll just make the switch.
yeah,
That's fine.
To the MSBA 421, to be clear,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So it could just be something that got lost in the shuffle of everything going on last year, and it should be fine.
So then should we have policy 430? I mean, you guys aren't making any changes to policy 430, but
No.
you've reviewed it. So we don't need to put that on. Do you guys want to put it on the board agenda, or we're not putting it on the board agenda?
I don't know that there needs to be any changes or any. I don't know if it needs to go on the board agenda if we're not making any changes, because you're not approving
Yeah.
anything.
Okay. So we'll just put a new date on it that it's been
Mhm.
reviewed. Okay.
All right.
Do you guys want me to tell you what's next in the 400 series that's old?
Sure. Or what is the 903A that we've got there?
Yeah, I was going to ask
It's,
before you do that, what's all the stuff at the bottom of this document?
That's stuff that I've been keeping track of so that it doesn't get forgotten, like the crisis management policy.
Got it.
Sorry, I have a 4-year-old that just ran in. Yep, so like the crisis management policy was something that Jeff had originally said we needed to look at, and then 903A is supposed to be part of another policy, I think 903.
So 903 is visitors to schools. 903A, if we wanted to do a procedures, we could. Otherwise, we would just update the 903.
Yeah, so I think that's where that was just like defining who could come into the schools and procedures and things like that, if I remember correctly.
Yep, on the bottom of 903, it's section 5, and it's the visitor limitations. And the visitor limitations refers to who can be denied if they don't follow procedures. Well, we don't have the procedures set. So that's what typically ends up being 903A then, is the procedures.
Yep. So all of that down there is just like keeping track of kind of where things are, and that's more like for me.
Oh, so 903A, it says that there's some examples available. Could we pull some of those together for, I know that visitors to schools isn't like top priority right now, given that we can't have any of that, but just for when we decide we want to bring it up, if we can have some examples, that would be helpful. Maybe that's something to look at in January.
Yep, we can do that. And hopefully we can look at crisis management in January. And that'll include the suicide prevention stuff. And then the 524 and 410, those are the ones. I'll give the 410 out to Kathy Moen. And 524, I'll follow up with Missy, but she's been swamped with all of our tech stuff. Got all those computers out, and now we're trying to just organize everything. So that one might be a while. Okay. 506 is the discipline policy, and that's the one later this month. I'm going to pull a committee together, and we'll start working on that one. So we should be good to go there. Does that take us back into the 400s then?
Yes.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm looking back at the policies for the second reading at the bottom of the page. We should make sure that the gender inclusion one is on there. Just because we missed that one this month, so, which is fine. But I feel like if we miss it again, then we'll just, I don't know, I'd lose track.
I was just
Right.
waiting for this meeting so that we could put it on there.
Oh, okay. All right. And so then, yeah, what's next up on the 400s?
I'm trying to remember.
Um,
I'm looking at that policy tracker document. I can't remember what the color coding means.
That's me internally things so that I remember. So like 428 and 429, you have a similar situation as you did with 421 and 430, where you've got two different policies with the same name.
But I don't see 428 and 429 in the policy tracker.
It is in the policy tracker. I'm looking at it.
428?
Is it down with
Yeah.
the 400s? I don't see it there
I don't
either.
see it
Yeah.
in there in the 400s.
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh,
I'll
wait,
share
there's
my-
two sections of 400. So there's,
Two sections of
there's
400.
one that's, yeah. So
These are
if
the ones
you-
that we don't have at all.
So scroll up a little bit. Yeah, so you're looking at this, which is all red, Bob.
Yeah,
Highlighted
But if you
below there.
scroll up, there's some more 400s up above
got
that.
it. Okay. And we have both 428 and 429 right now.
Yep.
Cool. Well, let's take a look here.
Yeah, are they the same on the website? That's what I'm working on pulling up right now.
They're not on the website. Oh, they're out of order on the website. They're on the page 3.
Yeah, they're the very last ones.
And we actually have we have 3 500 policies in the 400 series.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we need to look at the website too and make sure that just doing a scrub of what's out
All
there.
right. 429 is labeled improperly. 429 should be conflict of interest as it's currently.
Where is it?
And 428 is ethical behavior.
Yeah, they look different on the website.
Yeah, they're two different policies. It's just labeled. 429 is conflict of interest. These don't even have adopted dates on them. Nope. We don't know when it was reviewed because we don't know when it was adopted. But it looks like 2017.
That's at least, I just put that on there because that's when they were put on the website.
Oh, got it. Yeah, they don't have adoption dates, so all right.
Mhm.
So we can pull up the MSBA model policies of those and see if there's any differences or changes that they've made.
There are not model policies for those. I am on the MSBA website right now. There is no 428 or 429.
Well,
Are 420 and 429 policies we made up?
looks like it. The very first statement The purpose of this policy is to preserve state statutes. Well, typically we don't write a policy if there's a statute covering it. However, my guess is at the time this was developed, there probably was something happening in the district there where there was a need to call it out.
Yeah, it's interesting because even each employee must apply his or her own sense of personal ethics. Like, it's not really kind of laid out. It's very whatever you think.
Anytime we ask somebody what they think in policy, that's a problem.
You're responsible for applying common sense in business decisions. I don't know, but this policy seems like it's not really doing anything. So,
Well, does MSBA have something that has to do with conflict of interest somewhere else in their stuff that's just under some other number that we can't find?
So here's section 4 is what defines one of the things in A through F or more, multiple things happened that caused this policy to come into place.
Section 4.
So my guess is we probably had somebody who was married to someone else who was working for a company that we were getting goods and services from, or somebody at the time was on the school board and had a spouse or a sibling, a daughter, parent that was involved. And it's in one of those books, I'm sure of it. One of the Hastings books.
We don't have something in there. I feel like I've seen something about this in our policies somewhere, like along these lines of, I know we had these disclosures we had to sign when we joined the board, but I thought that, or maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe I'm thinking of the disclosures we had to sign.
Yeah.
As opposed to a
There are
policy.
there are conflict of interest policies too.
or that MSBA has.
I think we've adopted them like when Jeff was here.
And the, sorry, the common sense one that I was talking about, that was actually in the ethical behavior policy. So you're looking at conflict of interest. So you may not have seen that employees should exercise common sense.
Oh.
But
Here's where, if
Yeah.
you look at the bottom of the policy, it's in the, I knew I had seen the same thing, Brian. It's in our accounting and financial manual is where it outlines all of this conflict of interest.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess it's up to the three of you as whether you want to include it. We could, if it's not an MSBA policy, this is another one where we could go out and look at other districts and see what they have and see what they've tooled up. If we
That's
want
what
to
I
keep
would
it.
advise.
yeah, because right now, I don't know, the conflict of interest I think is interesting, but it's not actually referencing any other policies or any law or
Right.
anything like that. So I don't like that one. How it's written,
so
the
it
ethical
truly-
behavior is just completely wishy-washy and
So it
seems
truly,
like a
truly feels
waste
like
of
it truly feels like we
space.
kind of dropped it in there to try to deal with something that
Mhm.
we had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. It's fair.
Let's see here. White Bear Lake doesn't have one. I'll tell you one that I would like for us. So just Becky, if you could make a side note, I'd love for us to consider putting together a respectful workplace policy.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Simply because it provides the board the ability to call out, here's what we expect all of our employees to behave as defined by respectful workplace.
You know,
Not
Bob,
an
that's a really
emergency.
good call because we have had times in the past where staff have gotten a little sideways with one another on one thing or another.
Yeah, just how do we deal with
That's a
it?
good idea. That's a really good idea.
So, I mean, between, I'm just trying to picture how that would look between, you know, the code of, the code of ethics and then with equal opportunity. So are you looking for a policy that just, I guess like conflict resolution type with?
No, the one that I remember was when I was in White Bear Lake, they had put together a respectful workplace policy, and it simply, see if I can get to it. And I'd forgotten all about it, but I was looking for a 428 and I just saw it again here. So for example, so here's what it does. It defines it as maintaining an environment of mutual respect, preventing bullying, et cetera, yada, 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 in working relationships, but then defines what is considered retaliation. And then calls out what actions should be taken if there is some type of a complaint. And I don't know, it's something to just talk about at some point. But it does then, so like White Bear cross-references it with code of ethics, school board code of conduct, harassment and violence, and bullying prevention. So not a need, but like I said, I was thumbing through for the 428 and I just saw it.
Yeah, I think that's good. And it's an expansion of equal opportunity and defining, okay, well, what, you know, maybe we need to clear, because, well, equal opportunity is a very complex and vast law. So just
Right.
providing clarification. But I do like the idea of, you know, what is appropriate behavior in the workplace. And yeah,
So are we also
that conversation.
looking for examples for the ethical behavior, or dropping that one? Or would this be, the respectful workplace be separate, or like instead of that, or how are we thinking?
I think
I
those are
don't-
I think those are separate in a sense. You know, ethical behavior, there's, you know, you've got to operate within these parameters as part of this district. Whereas respectful workplace is more of a, I don't want to say it's a softer tone, but it's more of a, hey, you know, in looking at your neighbor, being kind to your neighbor, here are the types of things we expect you to do. I don't know if it's necessarily an ethical thing as much as it's a, hey, common decency, treat others as you'd want to be treated type of thing that we want to have on record somewhere. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with that ethical behavior piece is over half the staff in the district is already bound by a code of ethics. If they're administrators, if they're teachers, if they're anyone who's licensed, they're already held to a code of ethics standard. So it's interesting to me that this ethical behavior thing would be a policy.
You feel like it's redundant, Bob?
Well, not for the other half. And maybe that's what the intent was,
That's
right?
fair. That's fair.
So
Sure.
was it put in place to try and, it's hard to, it's where you almost wish you had somebody here that could say, here's why we did this. I don't know.
Well, so we can look at if other districts have that. But otherwise, between the 429, which I assume will need a bunch of different, I don't know, we'll make some big adjustments to that policy. If we're looking at the respectful workplace, that one will be a heavy lift too. Oh,
I'm
and it looks like
striking out
Becky has
defined
already
districts.
found an ethical behavior policy. Maybe?
You found one? Because I'm
No,
striking
no.
out the
No,
Oh.
that's the link to the White Bear Lake
Oh, okay.
respectful one. Oh.
respectful workplace
Yeah, that's on
policy.
me. I had asked Becky where it was. That's on me.
So yeah, I'm not finding any ethical, I'm not finding a 28 and 29 anywhere right now. Oh, no. So North St. Paul changed their 429. They have a 429 and it's respect in the workplace. So maybe that's a way to tackle those two. Maybe we somehow, we don't need the conflict of interest one and we change from an ethics one to a 429 and try to turn it into more of a respectful workplace.
Is there a different conflict of interest one? Just, I saw on our website, we have a conflict of interest for school board members. And then there's this conflict of interest. And it's possible that it's contained in a different file.
210 is going to be conflict of interest for school board members. Oh, here's what I bet has happened. So 209 is code of ethics as it relates to a school board. 210 was a conflict of interest as it relates to a school board. I'll bet something happened where somebody said, well, if the school board has a conflict of interest and a code of ethics policy, everyone else is going to have one too. That'd be my guess. A huge assumption, but that's my guess. Now let's see if it actually lives out that way here. Yep.
I'd say we just see if someone else has a conflict of interest policy, but I don't know, as far as staff goes, I'm trying to imagine a situation in which there's a clear conflict of interest that would be problematic. I understand for school board members because we're making big financial decisions, right? And deciding who to award contracts to and this and that, but I'm trying to think of an issue that could arise with a teacher, for example.
It may not be a teacher, it would more likely be an administrator. So an athletic director that makes a deal with Pepsi to put up signs because they're whoever, right, works for Pepsi distributing. You could see where, because of how we've got community ed and everything set up, the community ed director could be, you could make a deal with somebody who's running part of that senior center because they have connections with somebody in the city rather than going through a process.
It's interesting. So I just grabbed a random school district, but Minnetonka has a conflict of interest policy. It's number 210. And it also starts with, the purpose of this policy is to observe state statutes regarding conflict of interest.
But 210 would be for the school board. Because the 200s are a school board.
Nope, they have a
Really?
They have a separate one for the school boards. They have 211 as a conflict of interest for school boards, and 210 is a conflict of interest in general.
Really? Because are their policies not following the 100s, 200 MSBA deal? Because
Or they've got some general, but they have 2 conflict of interest policies in the 200 series.
Because the 200 series is usually pertaining specific to school boards, and the 400s would be to personnel. Now, it could be like us where they've got one that's in us, like a 500 in a 400 spot. I don't know.
So
it's definitely a 200 series. policy. I just looked it up and added a link to it on the agenda so everybody can see it if you want to look at it.
Okay. All right. So we'll
But
have
it
to make a
does,
decision about that then.
Mhm.
It's interesting, Kelsey, that it's in there like that.
But they at least make legal references where we didn't. But they adopted theirs in 1987.
Do they get to choose whether they're being ethically responsible or not?
I'm not seeing that, but
Mm.
this one is conflict of interest. They don't have an ethical behavior, so.
So, other than those, it looks like we've been through everything else, right? In the 400s? Unless we wanted to add something in the red.
Edina has one as well that's called, it's policy 439, and it's outside employment and conflict of interest. And so it's to help with activities that create or give the appearance of creating a conflict of interest with their employment with the district.
Yeah, to me, that makes sense to have something defined like that.
Yeah, but they don't have any statutes listed. They have their own policy 908, which is tutoring for pay listed, which I guess would make sense. You can't recommend your own students pay you to tutor them. But they don't have anything legal cited in theirs either.
That tutoring one was a big one. About 15 years ago, there were teachers that were tutoring kids during the school day and getting paid for it. So they'd have the kids stay after school. And at first, I don't think it was intentional. Like, I don't think anybody thought anything of it, but they would have the kids stay after school and tutor them for 2 hours in math and then collect a check from the parents. And so, yeah, that was an interesting one. My guess is that's where some of those tutoring ones came out.
Yeah, we can see if anyone else has that, but honestly, I'm kind of surprised that MSBA wouldn't have that set up as a model policy.
Right. Probably shouldn't go anywhere near nepotism. That would be a hard one. I wonder if we want to consider, I'd recommend we consider 424 license status. So if I'm thinking of the correct policy, that's put in writing so that a teacher that currently, let's say that I hold a math license and I hold an elementary teacher's license. What the policy typically says is that I can't go and the district doesn't allow me to resign one of my licenses, because what ends up happening is if you get into a situation where you need to make budget cuts or stuff like that, and one of the options is to save a person's job, you move another person because they're dual licensed. So they take me out of math, they put me into elementary. What ends up happening is if what I can do is call the state and have them resign my license before they do that, then as a district, I can't move them. And so what some districts do is they put in that license status that says you're required to maintain your license status and you can't revoke your license once you have it. while you're an employee with the district. So that would be something to consider.
And we don't currently have something like that, do we?
I don't believe so.
I think that's worth exploring.
I have a super quick question about these policies that were adopted or reviewed or whatever the case may be in 2018, 2019. When do you guys want, like, what do you guys want to have as the review cycle? Like, these are not a yearly mandated review.
Are there any recommendations out there for how often they should be reviewed, if not mandated? Like there's no standard or?
I don't know.
'Cause
I
without-
feel like
without-
the ones,
Go ahead, Elsie.
oh, like the ones that need to be reviewed annually, like if we get on a cycle where that's January and February of each year or something, and then the other months, you know, we just make our way through the rest of them. And then January and February, we go back to those mandatory ones. And then in March, we start our list again of ones we didn't hit the year before to review or something like that.
Mhm.
It would
I
be
don't think we
off
have the
for a
cycle,
year, but could we alternate them? I mean, we'd been off to start with, but if we could take the non-mandated, split them into two and alternate years or something like that. We'd start off
how many are
off
there
low.
total?
Say again?
I think it'd be good to see how many there are total. We need to go through each year, how many are mandatory for every year, and then how many other, and see if that seems doable in a 2-year period or if that needs to be a 3-year period.
Logical.
Yeah, but I think if we set up I think it would be good to set up almost like a calendar for it, because obviously we have not kept up with what's been needed to be done.
And that's
And
how I
is
pictured this going to, is that we would, once we get all of this cleaned up, we would then go to, okay, in June or July or August, sometime in the summer, we would do the mandatory ones. And then in the winter, you know, we could do a portion and just rotate it. I like the idea of like a 3-year rotation, just because I know we have a lot of policies.
Is that something that we could, I don't know where it'd get memorialized, but somewhere we could put it so that those that come after us kind of know what the cycle is, and make sure that those come after us utilize those same cycles so it kind of continues long after we're gone?
Yeah, I like that idea. I think we need to get a pulse of where we're actually at before we can put that in
Right.
writing though. Mhm.
Right.
But yeah, I like that idea. I think that's necessary.
So that's part of why I created that policy tracker, was to be able to put, like, you know, so I'm going to share my screen really quickly.
Okay.
Because this was something that I really appreciate that Stillwater does, is they do this where they'll show, you know, like this will say annually, but they have other policies where, you know, it was last reviewed in 2020, and then it'll say right here the date, or at least the year of when it needs to be reviewed again. So it'll say like 2020, the next time it's reviewed is 2023, you know? So that's, maybe this is, no.
Yeah, I like that. It would also be good if it were set up just in a document too, so that you didn't have to like dig through to figure it out. But if once we're done with this policy tracker, if it can be organized into, here's the yearly ones, and then we have like 3 chunks set up to just follow it. Because I also wouldn't want to get overwhelmed in a single year, because then that limits our ability to make new policy if we need to make new policy if we run out of time. So making sure it's sustainable.
Has anyone else's policy tracker sheet changed? I feel like now all of a sudden I'm missing a bunch of policies.
I was counting the mandatory policies for Kelsey.
Oh.
You're so efficient. Oh.
And each of these are supposed to be reviewed annually?
No, they're just mandatory.
Okay.
So there's 36 mandatory policies, and of those, there's only 11 that need to be reviewed annually of the mandatory policies. Yeah, only 11 annual policies total.
It's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it's
Kind of
gonna be
makes me
a lot
wonder
more
how
than
we were
that.
so far behind.
Well, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, even if it's a small number, if it's not on your radar, it's not on your radar.
I know, but I mean, like this school weapons policy hadn't been reviewed since 2006.
Well, we had
It's a
there
yearly
was another
review.
policy for something having to do with, it's in the discipline piece, and it had to do
Yeah.
with things that, you know, it hadn't been reviewed. The discipline policy hasn't been reviewed since '08. So things like cyberbullying and things like that aren't even on there because
Yeah.
it wasn't, you know, wasn't a
But they're
thing 12
supposed
years
to be
ago.
yearly.
I know.
So that's, anyway, this is why we're doing this and trying
Yes,
to get us
exactly,
on a better,
exactly.
better path.
So if we do the 3 additional, if we look at that in the 400 series, if we're looking at making some changes, whatever that looks like in 428, 429, and then we potentially look at a 424, the license status, do we stick with those 3 in the 400s and then move on to the 500s for now, rather than, I don't know that we want to be adding a bunch of new policies if our goal is to be
Right.
reviewing. Because anything that'll be a hot button topic is going to come out from MSB anyway and say, hey, you probably should have this or redo it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think we should go to, I don't know, looking at the 500s. I mean, there's a lot that haven't been looked at since 2006. So
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to work on getting to those. These ones that are really, really far back there.
So the nice thing about some of the 500s are, like, for example, 501, 502, those are, for the most part, statutorily driven as far as what you can and can't do based on Fair People Dismissal Act. And requirements for, like, weapons is a mandatory policy.
Mm-hmm.
Search is a mandatory policy, and we should be annually reviewing them. So we just need to catch up the verbiage and then get them into the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Because the easiest way for those two would be to find another district that has that's updated theirs in the last year, put that up against MSBA, see if there's anything that a district has tweaked, and then adopt it as ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there'll be
you're
some
spot on the
discussion on
verbiage.
that kindergarten age of attendance one based on kind of Scott's feedback, which is interesting because the last time this was reviewed has been since his kiddo started. Remember we talked, he had said his son had started early. So hence why we need policy set up so we're consistent.
So then maybe that should be the plan moving forward. It's just like,
Yeah.
you took on the 400s. We start working through
Mm-hmm.
the 5s.
Yeah, because there's a bunch more 5s that are in that 2006, the last time they've been looked at.
Right.
Student surveys. I wonder what that is.
Student surveys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm surprised that hasn't been updated.
That's what that's why I had grabbed that one, because I was like, that seems like technology wise, that seems like one that would be impacted by changing tech. But
Do we have
Okay.
to, if we're gonna start reviewing some of the 500s, are we needing to incorporate anybody from law enforcement and consult with them, or are we good just based on the statutes that are already out?
For which one?
Just some of these. I'm thinking like, for example, the school weapons policy.
Mhm.
If you look at, I'm just talking about ours, and obviously needs to be updated. But I just noticed, and this actually I noticed a couple of weeks ago. I was going through these. They have this piece on consequences for weapon possession, use, distribution, and I may have missed it, but if you look at how it's set up for students, it talks about 1 year expulsion, automatically 0 tolerance. Nowhere in there is anything about law enforcement. I think possession of a firearm by a minor is against the law. So it's just interesting. It's never, law enforcement is not mentioned there anywhere, but on the non-student piece, law enforcement is mentioned.
Correct.
So
Because you follow different statutes once it's as a school.
Mhm.
So the law enforcement doesn't get involved in anything as it relates to school policy or discipline. They're a separate organization. We
Mhm.
have to turn over to them if we want it to be charged out as a legal thing. We would hand over the information. They do with it what they want.
Sure. So my point about that is when you see the student piece, it doesn't bring that up though, that at the discretion of the superintendent or however that will work, this may be turned over. It's not even mentioned for the student piece, where it's mentioned for non-student, that prior to, that type of thing. So
Correct.
I guess we don't have to ask them about it. It just should be in there, I guess, is what I'm saying. But that's another conversation for another day. It's just something I picked up on, but I see your point. We don't need to ask them about it because it's separate. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Although
Duly
I
noted.
am looking, so here's one that I think we're going to need to kind of get on, and that's 530, the immunization requirements, as we talk about a
Ooh.
COVID vaccine and what that's
Ooh,
going to look like,
good one.
especially since we apparently are missing the forms and instructions and don't have those.
Well, that's embarrassing.
What do you mean we're missing forms and instructions?
Well, I don't know. They're red on here, right? And doesn't that mean we don't have them?
That means we don't have the MSBA version of it. That doesn't necessarily
Oh.
mean that we don't
Okay.
have some kind of form.
Oh yeah, we have all that stuff going out.
Okay. Yeah, and I assume that's going to be a hot button topic, and MSBA is going to be all over that one. But
I would think so.
we should at least be ready for that to hit our desk for MSBA to say, hey, here's this, and we should be ready to take it up. Not that we should rewrite it, because I anticipate MSBA is going to be giving out guidance for that one, but we should just have it back here that it's coming.
Interesting. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, flu shots aren't mandatory.
Mm-mm.
So.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen with COVID vaccines.
I don't either, because
Or how that'll be
interestingly,
handled.
since you brought it up, Kelsey, I just took a real quick look. It's interesting they mentioned that one of the exemptions is if you can prove immunity. So does that mean that if you have a valid antibody test, you don't have to you know what I mean? We could get into some.
Yeah, but the antibodies are only good for 6 months.
Right, so we get into a sticky
what
wicket.
does that do?
Well, it's going to be a difference between a vaccination and an immunization, right?
Yes.
You get immunized and then you don't get it. But that's why flu isn't in there, because flu is a vaccination. You can still get flu, but your chances, where immunization is about, not spreading
Long-term immunity.
Yeah, long-term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should.
So I don't know what that'll look like, but yeah, I'd say so.
So we're going to take on 500.
Yeah, there's a lot that haven't been looked at since 2006 in the 500s. So.
Yeah, it's yeah. So as we go through 500, Bob, I believe per what you kind of directed Scott and I, we do 500, kind of skip over 506.
Yeah, for now.
For the time being, right?
Yeah, for now, because we'll start that up here in the next week or so. Try to get a group together.
Sure. I know you wanted to allow a break, which I totally support for the folks that will be part of that group from the teacher's end. So I get it.
Okay.
Yep.
That is really red.
Discipline policy, it's completely appropriate.
Discipline.
We all know not to worry about it.
Right.
All right, that sounds good. And it sounds like we have a good plan going forward. So
Cool.
I'm excited about December's meeting and seeing what Jen's group brings back.
Yep,
And I'm glad they were excited about it and
I am too.
kind of liked having the opportunity. So
Yeah, it's yeah, she shared with me some of their stuff, and they're working through it, trying to figure it out what makes most sense. Jen's trying to help them understand that they're coming up with kind of value statements and not directives. And which is fine. I mean, that's what that group is doing an awesome job. So it will be interesting to see what they land on. All right, what else do we have to cover?
Well, we got our marching orders, so we know what we're going to be working on next.
yeah, it sounds like we've got it all set up for where we're going next. So I feel pretty good.
Cool.
Quick question.
Mhm.
Did we say just 424 as far as the 400 series, or did you guys want to look at 425 as well?
What is 425?
That was staff development. I couldn't remember if Bob's talked about that one yet. These are like the red MSBA policies that we don't have. So Bob had talked about 424 license status, but I thought you mentioned
No, that was
another
428, 429.
Bob. Okay, then I'm crazy. It's okay.
All right.
Cool.
All right, well, I feel good with where we're going, what we got to tackle next. For December, just so I'm tracking, what is our focus? We're going to be doing,
We have a meeting next week again, right? On the 3rd?
is that next week already?
Is it?
I think so.
Yes, it is. The day after the equity
Mm.
team meets.
Oh yeah, 4:30.
There it is.
Yeah, so we're going to go over the equity meeting or the equity policy
Mm-hmm.
next week. And that'll be I anticipate that one taking us a while. But otherwise, do we want to look at those couple from the 400s next week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Is 4-3 really next week?
Yeah,
My God.
Mm-hmm.
This year
I know.
is sailing.
it's already December.
Crazy.
Thank
It's almost
goodness. I need this year to
Christmas.
end. 2020 has just been full of crazy.
Great.
Can't wait to see what 2021 brings us.
My mom
Not
sent
crazy.
me a picture of the roses that were blooming in her garden 2 days ago.
Ugh.
I'm like,
That's
really?
awful.
Yeah.
I told her to stop doing things like that because that's rude. It's still 75 degrees daily down there.
Wow.
Mm,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know.
This is good stuff, guys.
All right.
Well, have a great Thanksgiving. If you're celebrating, stay safe, stay healthy.
Oh yeah, I got to do all the cooking this year because we're not going to my mom's, and the kids still want all of my grandmother's dishes and recipes. So